Hey everyone, welcome to a new series I'm starting where I teach you guys how to hand shade and make texture packs. In this first episode, we'll go over which software you should use, some important pack making vocabulary, and how to make your first sword. Make sure to subscribe if you want another episode. Alright, let's get into it. First off, the software. I really highly recommend using Paint.net, which sadly only works on Windows. Some alternatives to Paint.net are Photoshop, PicoPixel, or Aspray. I'm going to leave a link to how to download Paint.net in the description. So if you want to follow along with me and you're on a Windows device, I'd recommend pausing the video and downloading Paint.net. If you already have it, let's continue. So next up is a term you should know is a palette. A palette is the full range of colors used in a design. For example, in the sword, this is what the palette looks like. When making your textures, I recommend having a palette temporarily somewhere on the screen so you can always refer back to it so you know what colors you can use. So sometimes palettes are really hard to make, and it really just takes practice to learn how. So you must have a good amount of contrast between each of the steps of the palette. If you have too much, it'll look bad, and if you have not enough, it'll look bad. So you really have to find that sweet spot. I'll put on screen now an example of a good palette I made. And most palettes usually have between 4 to 10 colors, which is ideal. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the swords. So there are 4 main parts of the swords. There's the blade, which is the top, pointy part, takes up most of the sword. The crossguard is the piece that connects the top, which is the blade, to the next part, which is the handle. The handle is usually a wooden part that you hold the sword from. And then there's the pommel, which is the bottommost part. Now we'll start making the sword. Take the pack you downloaded, right click it, and press extract all. And press extract. Gotta wait for this to complete extraction. So basically what's going on is there's a folder with all the files. To transport it, you have to basically close it up. So now we're basically opening it so we can use it. So now, open up the folder, go into Assets, Minecraft, Textures, Items, and then I'm going to look for the diamond sword right here. So then if you have Paint.net installed, you're going to take the diamond sword, you're going to right click it, say Open With, and choose Paint.net. So if that happens, then Paint.net is going to open with the sword. So now we have the default 1.18 diamond sword on our screen. What I'm going to do to make this a bit easier, to make this a bit more original, I'm going to just make an outline of that. Be right back. Alright, now that I made my outline, we're going to make a palette together. I'm going to take the blue slider because I want to make a blue diamond sword. I'm going to make it blue, and then I'm going to make it a nice cyan. Feel free to do whatever colors you want. I'm going to take that cyan and I'm going to put it up here. This is where I'm going to put my palette. So some key things you should know is P for pencil, K to select a color, E for eraser, S to select, and once you have it selected, you have M to move. So we have this nice cyan color. I'm going to start by making a nice value. It's a bit lighter. Alright, that's a good highlight color. The highlight is the lightest part. Then I'm going to take the cyan and I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it, which makes it a bit darker. As you can see, it's a bit too much. From there, I'm going to continue by doing that, by adding a little bit of darkness to where you see this V and making it a little bit more bluer. This is called hue shifting. It's changing the color while making it darker. So I'm going to make it a bit darker, make it a bit more blue. Bit darker, bit more blue. Darker, blue. So as you can see, we have a nice palette here. The palette here has consistent jumps in contrast and is going to make a nice sword. So I'm going to start by seeing that the sword looks a bit too big. So I'm going to shave off the first few pixels and then fill it back in. And now I have a nice shorter sword. So we're going to start by shading the blade. I'm going to take the lightest color and I'm going to press F and I'm going to fill inside just so we have a bit of area to shade. So we have to remember that up here is where the sun is coming from, or where the light source is, and back here is where it's the darkest. So I'm going to take my darkest color and start making an outline with my darkest color. And from using that logic that I just said, this lighter over here, we can take our second darkest color and make it a bit lighter over here. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Then I'm going to take my second lightest color and start adding a bit of shading. Perfect. And then we're going to create this thing called the inline, which is the inside part. That's the darkest. I'm going to shade that a little bit better. And now we have a pretty good blade. Next up, we're going to shade the crossguard, or CG, which is this part right here. We're going to take, usually the crossguard is a bit darker than the blade. So I'm going to take this color, and then I filled it in with this color, and now I'm going to shade it a little bit by going like that. That looks pretty good in my opinion. I think I'm going to cut this part off. Yeah, I think that looks really good. Now I'm going to change the shape of the crossguard a little bit. I'm going to, let's see, what would look good. I could remove these pixels, and then I could remove these pixels. I like how that's a pretty default, but yet unique shape. I'm going to make these a bit lighter as well to have a little bit of symmetry, to add a bit more detail to the crossguard. Next up, I'm going to make the pommel, which is kind of easy. Since I have my outline, I can just plop that color in there. Change that pixel, because there are multiple different crossguard shapes. Could have it like this, could have it like this, could have it like this, and there's a lot more to choose from. But for this pack, I think I'm going to choose it like this. I'm going to find a color that looks not too bright but not too dark in the pommel. Now I'm going to shade it a little bit. So that looks really good. Now, all that we have left is the handle. The handle is usually brown or black. So I think I'm going to go for a nice black for this pack since it has a really nice saturated vibe. I'm going to turn down the saturation all the way in my color area. And I'm going to find a nice black that's not too dark. About gray. That looks good. So I'm going to create a palette for my wood. So I think this is going to be my middle color. I'm going to make 2 colors that are darker and 1 color that is lighter. So I said you should usually have between 4 to 10 colors in your palette, which is what I have for both of these palettes. So now I'm going to take the darkest color and put it on this side, which is going to be the darkest side because of the light source coming up from here. Then I'm going to take the lighter color there, and I'm going to shade it in like that. And finally, I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight right in the middle. So in my opinion, that's a pretty good 16x hand-shaded diamond sword. Once you have your sword, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase my palette so it doesn't show up in game. And then I'm going to click Control or Command S. And I'm going to save the sword into the diamond sword file. So then what I can do is I can go back to my folder, go to where you see the assets, credits, and pack folder. You can select all of them, click send to, and compressed zipped folder. In the next video, I'll go over what each of these files are and how to change the picture of the pack and the description of the pack in game. But for now, I'm going to select all of them, right click and click send to compressed zip. It's going to close back up my pack. I can rename it RH56 tutorial pack. I'm going to go into Minecraft go to my single player world, and I'm going to click Options, Resource Packs, and say Open Resource Pack Folder. This is going to show me where I put my packs. So I can take the pack that we compressed. I can do Command X to cut it. So it's going to take it from here, and then I'm going to put it into the Resource Packs folder. Then I'm going to go back into Minecraft. I'm going to go out and then back in. And then if we scroll all the way down, we're going to find RH56 tutorial. So I'm going to select that, press done, and then we'll have our sword. So then, after all of that, now we have our diamond sword. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you want me to make another episode. Thanks for watching.